Weekend of firsts across the board as the young stars storm to victory. First female winner in Verona, along with a first World Cup victory for Sophie Hinners. First ever meter 60 win for Alex Matz, along with his first World Cup in Toronto. And first ever win on home soil for Andres Escarga in Monterrey. The youngins are on their way up. Welcome to Horse Bytes, your 5 and 10 5-star show jumping, all in just 10 minutes. We saw a lot of jumping across the continents, but it's hard to talk about this week's sport without mentioning the overriding detriment that having multiple 5-star competitions on one weekend does to this sport. With weekend field strengths everywhere and a huge difference between indoor World Cup jumping and outdoor grass field jumping, the highest level of our sport was certainly diluted this week. That's not to say we didn't see some great moments and the talented youth excelling. But we also saw some chaos this week, with plenty of horses and riders overfaced and underprepared. With essentially 10 top riders at each location, maybe a few more in Verona, the classes become so split. It's hard for the course designers, and you end up seeing some people make it look really easy, while others who demolish the courses. Maybe that's just our sport these days and I'm too hard on the field strength, but when you watch 5 stars, you're looking for thrilling top sport, and I'm just not seeing that when everyone is so spread out. Either way, that's where we are at currently, and despite it all, some young talent shone through this weekend. First up was the $340,000 Grand Prix in Monterrey. Again, we saw a spectacular crowd who was engaged and enthusiastic, but it was certainly the most chaotic class of the weekend. 10 horse rider combinations withdrew before the class even started, 5 retired, and 3 were eliminated. It was run as a winning round, so 12 returned in the second round automatically. Anytime you have a designated jump off like that where the faults carry forward, people are far more conservative with their speed, which makes for like a less exciting jump off because having poles is far more costly. Of the 12 that returned, the 5 clear from the first round jumped double clear, and actually all 8 who had no jumping penalties from round 1 all jumped clear in round 2 as well. Contendros 2 and Andres Escarga eventually took the win in front of their home crowd.
Go on, it's enough! Andres Escarga and Contendros 2.
Ahead of Emanuele Camilli and Odense Odeveld, who recorded another runner-up position after finishing second in the last 3 meter 60s they've jumped. Although I wouldn't necessarily pick Odense as my favorite horse in the world, he's certainly proving to be ultra consistent and clearly one of the best horses in the sport currently. Harry Charles and Casco Blue rounded out the podium after 2 very solid clear rounds. In the end, the delicate vertical after the water proved the most difficult, catching out riders like Janica Sprunger, Gaj Rosa, and Emily Conter, while the combination at 4A and B caught out world number 1 Henrik von Eckermann, Bliss Heers, and Sammy El Dahan. Time wasn't much of a factor, and in fact, I thought it could have been even tighter in round 2, but it did catch out Eugenio Garza and Cantago, who took such an overly conservative approach to that vertical after the water, it cost them dearly. This week, the class almost started stronger than it finished, but to be honest, there were too many riders who really shouldn't have been jumping at that level, so perhaps it's time we put some safeguards in to ensure proper qualifications for jumping 5 stars. Next up was the World Cup in Toronto at the Royal. Perhaps a favorite stop among North American riders who enjoyed the exuberant atmosphere of the last vestige of agricultural greatness. The event hosts not only equestrian events, but also food and livestock entertainment unlike anything else in the world. A true spectacle in this day and age. But it was Alex Matz who stole the show all weekend long. He won 3 of the 6 FEI ranking classes, including his first ever World Cup victory on Ikigai. Besting a small field of only 20 riders, Matz followed in his father's footsteps, who won the Grand Prix 47 years prior. In front of a sold-out crowd of over 6,500 people, Matz made the best of his last-minute entrance into the event, taking a huge shot to the last jump and besting Canada's Tiffany Foster and fellow countryman McLean Ward. Matz was the only double clear of the class, and Tiffany Foster had the time by almost 2 full seconds, but had the last down. Have a listen to her thoughts on that heartbreaking rail.
Yeah, that was painful. That was just, I should have given her one more stride, I think. It's hard to gauge. I didn't want to be second by going too slow. So I I asked a little too much there.
It would have been a super home win for the Canadian, who's currently the second highest ranked female rider in the world, but nothing was going to steal the thunder away from Alex Matz this weekend. I won't say it was the most competitive class, and with 25% jumping clear, it was certainly above average for jump-off qualifiers at the 5-star level, but a double clear and a win is a win in any book. The first round saw almost half of the class have the Liverpool Oxer out of the corner down, and in an unusual fashion, the triple barely played a role at all in overall faults. But with such a small starting field, it's hard to say if statistics were that significant in this case. Ultimately, it was a nice class in a nice atmosphere, but it almost felt like an exhibition versus exhilarating sport. And lastly, the World Cup in Verona. It was the fourth of 14 legs for the Western European World Cup League, and perhaps most remembered for the death place of Eric Lamaze's wonderful stallion Hickstead. Luckily, no major incidents happened this week, and although an Italian has yet to win the World Cup Grand Prix, we did see perhaps the most skillful sport of the weekend. With the strongest field strength of the three events, Verona's course was also the most challenging. It asked a lot of questions, most notably testing rideability and scope, especially down the outside line, where we saw a very long 3 strides to a delicate offset Liverpool vertical, to a short 6 to a big wide Oxer that claimed many victims. The Liverpool vertical was the joker fence of the class, catching out over 8 riders. And we also saw a very scopy triple that we don't often see, with a vertical 1 stride to an Oxer 2 stride. That's always a huge scope test, as horses have to back up coming in and then stretch for the double Oxers. This was a difficult class, with 6 retiring, Jerome Guéry missing at the end jump and falling off, and only 5 eventually going clear. Sophie Hinners and her newer mount of Iron Dame's My Prince wrapped up the win in only their 5th 5-star meter 60 class together. They were the clear winners as the only pair to break the 38-second mark in the jump-off. Although second-place finisher Ben Mayer and Point Break were right on their heels, and had his horse not tripped on the landing of the double, I have a feeling he would have caught her. Marcus Enning was also quite quick, but after slowing up to the last, he had to settle for 3rd place on the podium. A pretty good class that felt like skill and execution won the day. All things considered, it was another packed week of 5-star jumping. Liverpool's proved the trickiest, and the veterans couldn't quite pull out the wins. But I'd give Monterrey a rating of 6 for great atmosphere, but lesser overall quality sport. Toronto a 7.1 for solid entertainment, but hard to give it much more with such a small field. And Verona, the highest of the week, with a 7.7 for solid scores across the board. Well, that's a wrap on this week's top highlights, and stay tuned next week for the sole 5-star competition out of Stuttgart, Germany. But before you go, check out the wildest moment from the week when Richard Howley's second round went from bad to worse as he tried to slice the end jump, took off on an angle, and hooked the whole standard with him as audible gasps from the crowd could be heard. He finished off the course nicely, and the 9-year-old looked unfazed, but ouch, that had to hurt. Stay tuned to all of our socials. Make sure to subscribe and follow along all the action as it unfolds here on Horse Bytes, your 5 and 10 5-star show jumping, all in just 10 minutes.